Hello, hello, my fellow geeks. Welcome to episode number 42 of the Indian AvGeek. My name is Vishal Mehra. Annyeong Haseo. That is hello from Seoul, South Korea. This is my country number 52, and I can attest to you that Incheon is indeed a fantastic airport. Like Mauro Oretti told us, all of us, weeks back. Our guest for this week is none other than Brian Kelly, the founder and CEO of the Points Guy. He is, of course, the ultimate points guru, travel hacker extraordinaire, and the guy who's turned collecting miles into an art form. Known worldwide, Brian is here to spill the secrets on how to turn your everyday spend into first class adventures, even from right here in India. Although I'm not in India right now, but you get the drift. So get ready to upgrade your travel game because this episode is about to take off with some seriously savvy tips and stories. Welcome to the Indian AvGeek, Brian.
Thanks for having me.
I have to start with what got you interested in aviation in the first place, Brian.
Well, I think I'm one of those people who just genetically were born to love planes. Some of my earliest memories as a kid were taking family trips. I was born in, right outside of New York City, and I just always had that urge to fly. I've always loved planes, and so I think I'm just genetically chosen, as we all know. Some of us just get it. Some people hate to travel, but I'm one of those ones that love to travel. So never did I ever think I'd be, starting a blog that became a major influence in the travel industry. It's been a really fun journey, but yeah, I think at a core level, I just love aviation and the notion that we get to travel around this incredible earth.
And that brings me to my next question. What inspired you to start the Points Guy? And how did the name The Points Guy came about?
So I started the Points Guy in 2010. I was working for Morgan Stanley. I was in tech recruiting. My job at Morgan Stanley was to travel around the U.S. doing all the college recruiting for computer scientists and engineers. So I wasn't making a lot of money working in HR for an investment bank during the Great Recession, but I was traveling a ton. And during that time, all the hotel and airlines were running really great promotions. So I was Delta Diamond, I was American Airlines Executive Platinum, and back in the good old days, anyone who traveled in the 2000s loved Starwood hotels. So I was a Starwood hotel junkie, and basically I was able to live this amazing life by maximizing my points, even on an HR salary in my 20s. And eventually, my colleagues and my friends, they all thought I was a trust fund baby because I was flying first class. And I remember the turning point was for me when I was flying on a recruiting trip with the managing director of technology who probably made well over $1 million a year. And corporate policy was that we had to fly in economy on short flights. So I remember him walking behind me in first class to go sit in economy, this millionaire. And I was like, this is really cool that just because I know how to leverage elite status and get my upgrades, that the 26-year-old HR associate gets to fly in first class. And so in 2010, I just started the blog. Actually, it wasn't even a blog at first. The Points Guy was a award booking service. So I would charge people $50 and I would tell them how to use their points. And that was the first business. It was a shell website, a form that you could submit. And so yeah, I was full-time, recruiter, and then come home at night and I would help people use their points to take trips, like a travel agent for points. And that was the original business model. I just wanted to take this knowledge of how to maximize points, make some extra money. And eventually a friend of mine said, hey, it's 2010, blogs are blowing up. You should start a points blog. And of course, there were other points bloggers out there. But I wanted to take a different approach, have more fun. A lot of the points bloggers at that time were just doing it for the points, how to maximize, how to get the most value from the airline, mileage running, fly to Mumbai, get off the plane and come straight back to JFK. And I actually love to explore destinations, so I never understood that. Yes, I understood why people would want status, but I didn't understand the pure gamification of miles and points, of just traveling to fabulous destinations for the points. It seemed to me that that was missing the point of travel. So I wanted to kind of put my spin on it as someone who actually loves to get off the plane too and explore destinations. And I think that's what really helped me kind of take the points guy mainstream, because it wasn't so fringe. It wasn't just about the calculations of beating an airline, cents per point redemptions. It was, hey, here's how to busy working people can leverage points smartly in their day-to-day life and then take incredible vacations with their family. That to me was the joy of it, and I think that's the message that resonated with millions of Americans.
So TFB, Trust Fund Baby, became TPG.
Yeah.
Points guy.
Well, so to be clear, there
I'm
was no
just
trust
joking.
fund. My trust fund was American Express points, and because at the time you could pay $95 and I would get all the points from my Amex, my corporate Amex card, which is a trick most people at Morgan Stanley and other banks didn't know, that you could just call up, pay $95 to join the membership rewards program, and then you could get all the points from your expense reports. So I didn't tell my colleagues because I wanted all the points, and they knew me as the expense guy. I would do all the expenses, MIT, Stanford, all the career fairs were going on my credit card, and everyone was thanking me. Oh, thank you. We don't have to do expense reports. I'm like, thank you. I get to go to Europe for free next weekend just by doing an expense report. That's a fair trade to me.
Fantastic. How have you seen the travel rewards landscape change since you started the Point Sky in 2010 to now?
Well, in my book that I just came out with this year, How to Win at Travel, I open up talking about how we're in what I call the platinum age of travel. And really, that started in 2010 and up until where we are now, where there, especially in the US, there's been a proliferation of loyalty and rewards. I think all the US airlines are leading the pack in terms of how loyalty is driving their businesses. In America, most airlines make more money with their loyalty program than they do transporting passengers. That is really incredible. Now, you can look at that a number of different ways uh, but the bottom line is loyalty's driving the travel industry globally. The US is ahead of most other countries, but we're seeing a lot of other countries, including in India, play catch up. Like, oh, our loyalty program has been an afterthought or it's been a cost center. What if we actually flipped that on its head and created a program that added value, flexibility, and actually empowered the consumer to redeem it, in multiple ways, because in 2010, the loyalty game, people were very skeptical. It was really just for frequent business travelers. You had to have your butt in seat on planes, and there really weren't that many credit cards. In the U.S., it was Amex was the main game. In 2010, Chase launched their Sapphire Preferred very quietly. That became a very big card. So basically, Chase made we want to come after Amex. So Chase stole a bunch of Amex employees in '08, '09, '10, and 2010, right when the Points Guy was starting. So it was the right time, right place, because I then got into affiliate marketing with credit cards in 2011. And that's what let me actually monetize this points thing. Up until then, I was just sharing deals, my knowledge. It was very much a leisure, fun blog. And, all the credit card companies coming out of the Great Recession said, we need to get, the prime
More
business.
signups. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
since 2010, in 2016, Chase launched their Sapphire Reserve card, which broke the internet. The largest credit card launch in the history in the United States. That really got a lot more people into travel, and it just keeps going up and up from there. In the U.S., all the credit card companies have lounges in airports. Capital One is expanding. We have Chase Sapphire lounges, Amex Centurion. So I think the biggest trend is that people in the U.S. are shifting their loyalty away from airlines and hotels and giving it to credit cards. So specifically in the US, it's people are now loyal to their credit card companies more so than travel companies, which I think is incredible because in 2010 it was all about picking and choosing an airline or a hotel and getting into bed with them.
You know, Brian, I was going through the recent Investor Day presentation of JetBlue, and that's one of the areas they want to focus, making more folks sign up for their co branded credit card. If you look at Delta, if you look at United, they are making most of their money, a large portion of their um, profits, let me say that, not money, not revenue, but a large portion of their profits via credit card partnerships, selling their points currency to banks. And that's what Frontier has been talking about as well. Traditionally a ULCC, but now they're trying to premiumize their offering. Most LCAs in US are anyways having business issues right now due to a variety of factors.
All the airlines that are struggling have not paid enough attention to loyalty. Simply having a beautiful mint business class is not enough these days to get people away. You have to have loyalty, and JetBlue is was late to the game. Their technology stack is terrible. And I love the JetBlue product. Their foundational promise to consumers, fast free Wi-Fi, free snacks was great, but not enough to get those, really premium travelers who had elite status, who were treated like gold. Um, so, so yeah, all the, we're seeing Spirit Airlines and Frontier adding first class cabins, perks to top flyers. You have to play that game in order to win. Because unlike Europe, where Ryanair is successful because they have these airports that are super cheap, they're not paying for jet bridges, they have a different model. In the United States, all the low cost carriers, they've got to fly into LaGuardia, Newark, expensive airports. So you can't take a Ryanair model into ultra expensive premium airports, where most of the US population lives. So they're now realizing, oh, wait, we really do need to have that premium traveler, and we're not getting them if we don't have a competitive frequent flyer program.
And in so many ways, this is a moment of reckoning for Southwest as well. They have Southwest Rewards and those related partnerships, but certainly not as strong in the loyalty game as the big three, right?
Correct. Yeah, their loyalty program has been okay, but there's no real reason to get their credit card because they gave away everything for free. So it's unfortunate that they're, now unraveling everything about their brand to chase credit cards. And I think even their credit card offering is lackluster. I think they're not, it is very challenging in this day and age to get someone away from a premium airline where they're treated very well. So Southwest wants to be a premium airline like Delta, but their planes are not Delta, and consumers are not going to pay a premium and switch their credit card and start spending on a credit card that gives them one free check bag on Southwest. That's not the aspirational part of these loyalty programs. Premium travelers want to have a lounge. They want to be able to have international partners to take that once a year trip. So Southwest does not have the route network, the in-flight experience. They want to be that premium carrier, but by simply charging for bags and forcing people to get credit cards, it's not the way that it works, and they'll soon find that out.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough climb for them. Brian, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about earning and redeeming points and miles?
I think the biggest misconception is that this is difficult or this is still for rich people. You have to have a perfect credit score, six-figure income. And, in my book, I really teach people the basics of credit, especially in the United States. We have legions of college students who are taking advantage of this loyalty game. You do not need to have a huge income. You just need to be smart. You need to look at every single dollar you spend. And once again, in the US, you can earn points on rent now with Built, and Built points are the most valuable points out there. I know anytime I travel internationally, people get jealous of all the credit cards we have. I mean, the Capital One Venture card gives double points on every single purchase. So that's my base earn. I earn 2 points per dollar on every single dollar I spend, minimum. Then, or unless it's rent, which is 1x on Built, but still 95% of places around the world, you're not earning points for free. No fees on rent, your biggest expense. So there's so many other credit cards that give 5x on airfare, like the Amex Platinum, 4x on dining and groceries. So we live in this world where in the US, it's actually pretty easy to get 3 to 5 credit cards that really reward you across the board. There's about 10 different credit card companies, and by getting a credit card, it's not ruining your score. In fact, the more credit cards you have open, your score goes up, as long as you're paying them off in full every month. So I think just understanding how credit works and being smart. And the beautiful thing about the points game is the more you play it, the more points you get. You can travel the world essentially for free, and your credit score goes up. So even if you're renting an apartment today, I love when young people play this game because they realize how important their credit score is to every aspect of their life. They monitor their score. So it's a game that allows you to see the world, but also improve your personal financial health. And that's what I love. And the myth of, oh, this will cost you money in annual fees, it's not worth it, that is, that couldn't be further from the truth if you actually take a minute to understand how the system works.
You were just talking about college kids and folks who are starting their journey in this game. For beginners, what's your advice for building a points and miles strategy, given different credit card and airline ecosystems in India, US, or wherever else?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, look at your travel habits. How often are you going to travel every year? And these days, I recommend take the carrier or carriers that just get you there most efficiently. Especially in the US, our travel infrastructure is under a lot of stress. I do not recommend, 15 years ago, especially when I was younger and loved flying, I would connect or double connect to get more points or for elite status. That ship has sailed because the elite status isn't based on how many flights you take anymore. It's really in the US based on your spend. So, I would just say, look, choose the airlines that you enjoy flying, that you feel kind of home when you're on that airline, and that have the best schedules. Because, so then once you understand the airlines you fly, in your life, but also where do you want to go? What are the loyalty programs that align with where you want to redeem? If you fly a lot between India and the US and you like to fly on Emirates, there are credit cards that will allow you to transfer to Emirates. And really, when it comes to credit cards, the airline co-brands, I don't put almost any of my spend on them because I would rather spend on what's called the transferable points cards, the bank credit cards that give you tons of options. The bank credit cards are where it's at. So you can pick the airline that you love, but don't also get a credit card with that airline, because when you go all in on one, the airlines are devaluing their programs now, and you are setting yourself up for heartbreak. When you go all in and give your love and loyalty to one airline and then they make changes, they lose a partner that you've been dreaming of using, that's a mistake I see a lot of people making. So, choose the airline that makes you happy, but choose a credit card that gives you flexibility.
Flexibility, really important. You mentioned revenue based programs, Brian. And in India, we are seeing those changes in our FFPs as well. What are the biggest changes you expect in the next few years, especially with airlines and hotels updating their loyalty programs? Are there any other trends you are witnessing?
Yes, so sadly, what we're seeing is these loyalty programs just keep printing more and more miles and points. And it's a brilliant business model. I mean, there will be so many business school studies of, the airlines and hotels, they've discovered the free cash machine in loyalty programs. They can just keep printing and selling more points. But what they need to do on the redeem side, when people go to redeem them, every week we're seeing, this week Hilton just had a surprise devaluation. Even Southwest, all of a sudden their points used to be worth, 1.3 cents per piece when you redeem them. And then all of a sudden one day it's 1.1, which may seem small, but it's a huge devaluation in terms of the consumer.
Some changes recently in Bonvoy as well.
Couple
Yeah,
of days
Bonvoy
back.
just made some stealth changes on, what their members, Marriott has gotten so big they can't deliver on, the promises of the program.
In a way, one feels they've stopped caring. They know they are the biggest game in town and they will generate business one way or the other. They just launched a new brand in India, by the way, called Series by Marriott.
The biggest, one of the biggest trends has been consolidation, where the hotel companies are just buying up all the smaller, unique brands. The airlines, especially in the US, have all merged. You've certainly seen that in India, where, the few carriers that were independent eventually get sucked up, and all the specialness of those carriers kind of gets lost, and the value usually doesn't go to the consumer, it's going to shareholders. So, in order to stay ahead of that, that's where consumers just need to diversify and not just uh, give all of their money and business to one single airline. And for in America, what we've been telling people for years is foreign frequent flyer programs, because while they are devaluing, they're devaluing at a lower rate than in the U.S. So there are still great sweet spots out there, incredible redemptions, but you usually have to uh, use frequent flyer programs outside of your comfort zone, and that's where you can get the most value.
That's a good segue. With the rise of new award search tools like Point.me and Seats.aero, how do you see technology shaping the future of award travel?
Yeah, this you have to be using technology these days. And in full disclosure, I am an investor in PointMe and Rome.travel because I see the need for them on a day-to-day basis. I love Seats.aero. And for those listening who may not understand what these programs are, Seats.aero is really magical because it will allow you to dive deep into one singular program and show you a year's worth of availability in one fell swoop. So if your dream is to go Emirates A380 uh, from Delhi to Dubai, and you want to see what dates they have first class. Well, now first class, you have to have elite status with Emirates, so that they took a lot of that joy away. There are some workarounds, but business class, you can, see a year's worth of availability and then kind of plan your trip around when you see the availability. That tool is amazing, especially for really unique flights, or if you want to go to Japan and fly business class. Sometimes those routes are hard to get. So, yeah, that's how consumers, the experts are staying ahead of the game and getting the best availability. I do think there's a new one of those tools popping up all the time. And at the end of the day, many of them are just scraping airlines, and it's sort of a cat and mouse game. We've seen Seats.aero is getting sued by some airlines because the airlines don't want to share their award data. Some airlines are realizing now that, hey, it actually is probably good for us to allow people to search for award availability. But there's a fine balance of a lot of the people redeeming points are premium travelers who might actually pay for business or first class. So, the airlines are, they want to have people redeem and have value in the program, because if there's no underlying zest for the program, they know people will shift to another. So it's a very interesting time where the airlines don't want to cannibalize premium, that cash coming in from travelers. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to get the credit card money and the premium traveler money. They know they have to throw some bones to the premium traveler, but they're trying to get people used to redeeming more and more points. And these tools allow the consumer to redeem less. So, I love these tools. I wish them all the best. I think they need to evolve. Some of them, they're not all, there's no one tool that's perfect. Each has its own. So I don't know if there's consolidation in the industry. I'd love to see it in some of these tools where they team up and create one mega tool. Because right now you kind of have to piece together, using different tools for different reasons.
A mega tool. Sounds great, but might attract more unwanted attention from airlines to hunker down even more.
Well, I was just going to say on that, I think the airlines need to play a very careful game here, because frequent flyer miles are essentially a currency. And, open banking regulations, especially in the US state, if I have money, the bank can't tell me I can only go to the bank's website. I'm allowed to use third-party tools to help me plan for retirement and do budgeting. I own my money. And while the airlines own the airline miles technically, I think they're treading they're dancing on a dangerous line by not allowing consumers to use third-party tools. Because what's going to happen is consumers are going to band together. Governments have already started in the U.S. There was heat going on these loyalty programs saying, well, you're making billions of dollars and then you're not going to let people redeem them, or you're going to change your rules overnight. So I would caution loyalty executives. I know how easy it can be to just say, oh, okay, let's devalue, devalue, devalue. We want more of that value. But there will come a breaking point, and I think they could kill the golden goose by suing these programs that are just trying to help people redeem the points that they, were told would be valuable.
I think the recent Alaska Hawaiian merger, Department of Transportation, the US DOT, did specifically mention about availability of award seats as a condition.
Yeah, that was the first time the US government actually put in the deal sheet with the airlines and we're going to let you merge, but you can't devalue your miles. You have to be, and that was really a landmark way that the government saying, hey, we've got your eyes on you. We know, you want to merge to get all these cost savings, but if you're going to take it out on the consumer, you know, you should not be doing it in terms of devaluing the loyalty program, at least not right away within this time frame.
But that's Alaska and Hawaiian, with all due respect to them. They're not the big three. Do you think those guys will fret over it or they'll figure out a loophole?
They're always going to figure out. I mean, the industry, there's no existential, actually, the one existential threat that everyone in the industry is worried about is legislation. So it's called the Credit Card Competition Act. It is a bill that actually, this week might be reintroduced onto crypto legislation that they're introducing in the US. This bill is catastrophic for credit cards because all Visa and MasterCards in the US, which many are premium travel rewards cards. If this bill were passed, they would make you get a debit network, essentially, like a low frills, no points, no perks network put on your credit card that the retailer could decide, hey, we don't want to give you your points. We're going to run it on this debit card like network. And that would be really bad for consumers. That would really mess up the industry and have catastrophic effects. So as someone who's lobbying against that and is very pro-consumer, I'm kind of telling the airlines, like, look, if you're going to have consumers on your side and we're going to battle this horrible bill together, you also can't, be so egregious in how you're devaluing these programs over time because you're giving the government a reason to come in and legislate if you're going to be extra greedy and, devalue what's in consumer pockets today.
What's the most extravagant redemption, Brian, you have ever made with points? And was it worth it?
Well, I think I just had my biggest redemption this weekend. So I'm 6'7", so I'm really, really tall. There's actually many business class that I don't fit in comfortably. And I was just in Singapore for a very quick work event. So I knew I had to fly there in style so I could be rested. So I flew Singapore first class there, which was, I think, 250,000 points. I flew their first class through Frankfurt, which was very nice. But I did the real splurge on the way home, Singapore, Paris, New York on Air France La Première. And I got to fly, I think I'm one of the few people I just started posting about it who've actually paid to fly it. There was a media flight or two. 533,000 flying blue miles and $500 to fly first class from Singapore to Paris, Paris to New York on the new plane, that last leg. And wow, I love seeing innovation in aviation and what Air France has done. It's not, I think the Emirates Game Changer Suite is a more exclusive, the floor to ceiling doors, but the Air France product's really beautiful. It very much is almost like flying private, what you would see in a beautiful private jet.
Now, we have plenty of TPG fans in India. You're talking to one right now. For Indian listeners dreaming of luxury travel on a budget, what's your single best piece of advice?
Well, for people who can't get credit cards like in the US, there's still so many ways to earn points. Most of the airlines and hotels have shopping portals. So if you do any online shopping, that's an easy way that you can still earn points. And sometimes if you want luxury for less, there is still arbitrage opportunities for smart people to buy points, especially when airlines and hotels, they often sell points at a discount. And also just be clever. There's still so many sweet spots out there. For example, Emirates, if you want to fly Emirates, they have a really good upgrade program where the day of departure, as long as there's a single seat in business or first, you can use miles to upgrade at a pretty reasonable ratio, no extra taxes and fees, unlike a lot of carriers. So each carrier has its own still sweet spots and promotions that they're running. And I think for savvy travelers, there's always an angle. And sometimes you got to do a little bit of research. And even on the Points Guy, we don't cover a lot of the insider baseball, but there are Reddit threads out there. For those who are enterprising and want to still get value, there's still plenty of ways to do it, even if you're not living in the US and getting all of our juicy credit card offers.
What's the most important lesson you have learned from a decade and a half of helping people travel better?
I think being kind goes a long way. I see it every day where people are rude to airport agents, and I understand the frustration, but that never gets you anywhere. And being kind, smiling, listening when the flight attendants are doing their in-flight safety briefing, they want to help you. So just give them attention. Small things can help, I think, spread positive karma throughout your journeys, and sometimes karma points are more valuable than frequent flyer miles.
Very well said. Any bucket list destinations or aviation experiences maybe you haven't ticked off yet?
So aviation wise, I've flown almost all of the top first class products. I still have not flown ANA, the suite, which is a top 3 product from what I hear. I've done the Japan Airlines A350-1000, which is fantastic. So I think the ANA is the and also their A380, which flies to Hawaii. So I think I might do a little route through Hawaii on my next trip to Japan. And then in terms of destinations, my last continent's Antarctica. I'm actually going this fall. Lindblad Expeditions now has a journey where you can fly from Chile to Antarctica, so you can avoid that Drake Passage, the really rocky. And so I'm actually, flying to Antarctica later this year with Lindblad National Geographic. And I'm actually taking my 2 young kids and my parents with me to Antarctica, which I would not do if we were going through the Drake Passage. So it opens up, especially for aviation geeks, an interesting way to visit Antarctica.
You are a brave man, Brian.
A brave man.
Let's talk about the book. What inspired you to write How to Win at Travel?
The Points Guy started in 2010. It's been 15 years now, and we, have millions and millions of readers, and we're well known, not just in the US, but globally, certainly some markets over others. But, people are still confused. And I wanted to write a book that is easy to understand, that will take anyone through. And I think for your audience, people will say, well, I don't have all the credit cards of the US. But the book is 15 chapters. Earning points, redeeming points, and the perks are 3 core chapters, but there's so many other chapters that don't have to do with just US programs or US credit cards. Fear of flying is one of the top questions I get. Millions of people globally are afraid to fly. So I did an entire chapter. I interviewed experts, doctors, and all the different ways people have gotten rid of their fear of flying. I got to interview Whoopi Goldberg, who is iconic legend. She shares her story of her fear, where she actually had to be, when she had to go to London for Sister Act, they actually had to get a private jet where they had an anesthesiologist put her under so she could fly to the premiere of Sister Act in London. So she tells her whole story and then her journey. She now flies commercially all the time. Still a little nervous, but like all the different therapeutic techniques. So this book is way more than just points. This isn't a manual on loyalty programs. This is a little bit of story of my life, where I see the industry going. And then I end, the book, the 15 chapters on the future of travel, where I interview really interesting people like Blake Scholl, who's the CEO of Boom Supersonic, which is a somewhat controversial new supersonic travel, the future of urban mobility and drones. So I wanted to, have fun. The book was the biggest challenge I've ever undertaken, but giving people a sense of where we are today and where we're going, and just being optimistic in general about travel, because I think there's still a lot of naysayers about the travel experience, but I still think once again, we are in the platinum age of travel where you can travel around the world safely, relatively affordably, and I think that's something special.
I've read about Jennifer Aniston also being a very nervous flyer.
Yes, yeah, lots
So
of people. Yeah,
Maybe someone to consider for the next book.
yes.
Now, I'm very keen and curious about Boom and what they are trying to do. What are your thoughts on Boom and on supersonic travel? Do you think there's a future there?
Look, I am not a naysayer. Some people, so many people are so dense where they're like, well, it didn't work with the Concorde. Well, guess what? The Concorde was made in a different time. It was not made for sustainability and success. But I mean, that was developed basically in the Cold War, pre-computing, so you can't just say, no, it didn't work back then, therefore it won't work. So I do love Blake, the CEO of Boom's optimism there. He got the Trump administration to pass legislation that will allow supersonic travel. So there's all these barriers. They're not insurmountable. They can be fixed. And I do think, people want to travel quicker. If you can take travel times down by 40%, it could really open up. And it's not necessarily, sustainability wise, it could work. Now, is it going to happen by the end of this decade like they promised? I find that extraordinarily hard to believe because it's considering how long it has taken Boeing to make a 777X. I find it would be extraordinarily difficult. So who knows on the timeline? I'm not an expert there on supersonic aeronautics, but I'm hopeful for it. I think it would be cool. What do you think? Do you think it's going to happen?
Okay, here's what I think. I think Jet Zero's prototype will fly before Boom. I know these are two different aircraft types, and I really do want both of them to succeed. But right now, to me, Jet Zero seems a bit more plausible from economics and a market fit point of view. For Boom, of course, it's going to be tough, and Blake does not need me to tell him that. All the best to him, and I'm sure all AvGeeks will be rooting for him too.
Yeah.
Your book covers everything from leveraging points to beating jet lag and handling travel mishaps. Which strategy do you think is most underutilized by travelers today?
Well, I think everyone should be aware of blood clots. That's one of the key messages in the book. As frequent travelers, wearing compression socks, making sure you stand up. Many young people get blood clots and embolisms, and I don't think we talk about it enough. And I know it's not the most exciting topic to talk about, but it is important that we all take our health seriously, especially people who are traveling frequently, because being on a plane can have very negative and potentially even deadly effects on our bodies. So, when I dove in with the doctor in that chapter about that is something I know two people who have had blood clots in their 30s. And if not diagnosed, and if you're not aware of the symptoms, it could be deadly. So I'm very hopeful that people take that out of that chapter, that simple things like just walking around every couple hours, wearing compression socks can actually save your life. So I think we love aviation, but making sure to understand how to stay healthy is very important.
My next question was going to be asking you to share an example from the book where a small change in planning led to a big upgrade or savings on a trip. I think you have covered that pretty well. Not an upgrade or savings, but a very important example nonetheless. Would you like to add on something to that?
Yeah, when things go wrong, so your mentality shift has to change. So many people start screaming at the airline when things go wrong, but no, stop, take a breath. Think to yourself, how do I leverage this to my advantage? And this is where empowering yourself with information. So, for example, what other airline? So my flight's canceled, but how else can I get to where I'm going? Does this airline have a partner airline? Maybe there's business class available. Let me approach the agent and say, hi, I really need to get home. There's one seat in business class on this partner carrier. Flight 23, there's 2 spots in J. Can you please help me out? I really appreciate it. People don't understand the power of that over screaming, I hate this airline. Let me just remind everyone, the airlines do not care. Even if you have a huge following, they generally don't care. So get that out of your head, that you saying you're never going to fly the airline is going to get you what you want. So small changes in mentality shifts. Okay, there's a 2 hour line at the gate. Let me just buy a day pass and get into the lounge and go speak to the top agent at the lounge. Sit down, calmly ask what you're looking for. Don't demand it. Give them a compliment. How's your day going? Okay, I need help getting home. This is what I'm thinking. Could you help me out with this? That mentality and that mind shift change, I think, has changed my life. And I get excited anytime there's, a delay or change that can open up you getting first class. Sometimes they'll rebook you in a full revenue class where you're earning frequent flyer miles. Then you can get your original routing credits. You're double dipping and flying first class. And I think everyone, unless you really need to get home to your child, about to be born, most of our time's not that valuable. So enjoy the ride, even when there's delays. Bring a book, listen to a podcast, reframe your mental narrative around, your perceived injustice. Because guess what? Like the hiccups are going to happen, and it's part of the game.
You describe this era as the platinum age of travel rather than the golden age in the book. What do you think makes travel today better and more accessible than in the past, Brian?
Well, what people need to understand is when you see pictures on social media of the golden age, Pan Am, 747s, economy when they used to have China. Well, listen to this clearly. There was no economy class back then. What you're seeing in economy was more expensive than first class today. So unless you were rich, you weren't flying. Middle class people were not flying. So I think today's model of almost anyone can fly, cheaply around the world to see family, to be reconnected. I think that's beautiful. I don't think you should have to pay for China and fine dining if you don't want to. If you'd rather preserve your cash to spend it with family and invest it in your children's education, you should have the ability to say, hey, I want the no frills route. But if I want to splurge, guess what? I think international first class flying today is way better than back in the day. Planes are safer. That is undeniable. Safety, even with the situations we've had recently, it's still extraordinarily safer to travel today. Planes are better, first class suites, lie flat beds. None of that existed back in the day. So in the front of the plane, things are amazing. I've flown the Etihad Residence twice in the last 6 months. That I can redeem points and have a full double bed in the sky with my
And
own
a
shower.
shower. Yeah, exactly.
So you can't tell me that Pan Am's rusty old 747 with people smoking and a recliner seat's better than the Residence, because guess what? It wasn't, and it was about the same price. So, you know, yes, things are getting tighter in the back of the plane, but even in the, premium economy is now a class that didn't exist 15 years ago, really, in many airlines. So you can now splurge a little bit more to have that leg room. So I think there's more options. It's safer. And then the whole nod of platinum age is, a nod to loyalty. You don't have to be a millionaire to travel like one if you leverage loyalty. And that did not exist. Pre 1978, airline loyalty programs weren't even a thing.
Couldn't agree with you more. Jet lag and fear of flying are common concerns. You'd mentioned about Whoopi Goldberg in the same context some time back as well. What practical tips from your book would you recommend to listeners who struggle with these issues?
Yeah, jet lag impacts everyone, whether you realize it or not. I know so many people who say, I don't get jet lag. Well, you do get jet lag. You just probably are not paying attention to it, or it's impacting parts of your body and digestion that you're not realizing. I think the biggest, everything about jet lag is circadian science, which I learned a lot researching. My key tip there is that the app Time Shifter is key. That is in all of my research and talking to lots of frequent travelers. Shifting your time before travel, especially the further you're traveling time zone wise, that is how you get your body ready for the time. You can prep your body for that time zone change in advance, and that is what can dramatically reduce the amount of time. Because generally it's 1 hour per hour of time change, 1 day per hour of time change. So if you can prep your body and start slowly changing your schedule and then sleeping and getting light exposure at the right times, that's really how you beat jet lag. And
And how far out you start doing that?
usually about two
How much
days
in?
before a trip, 2 days, 2 or 3 days
Uh,
before a trip, you can start adjusting your bedtime. You can, a big mistake people make is, melatonin can be very useful, but often the melatonin gummies that you get, or, it's slow acting. So it doesn't actually, people need less melatonin and more quick acting. And so get a fast acting melatonin and use it at the right time before you want to go to bed versus taking one that's going to be slowly going throughout your system way past the time you need it. So there's all these hacks that I didn't know about. I never looked at the melatonin release, whenever I'd buy that. So, uh, so yeah, it's really about preparation. Yes, you can go in and think that I know as I've gotten older, jet lag is more and more of an issue, and it's okay to get jet lag because everyone gets it. Whether you like it or not, you can try to be a hero, or you can do some small things that will dramatically help you enjoy your trip more. Because the more you just address these issues head on, we've all been jet lagged in a beautiful destination and not enjoying it to the fullest because our bodies are not are not agreeing. So yeah, I just think educating yourself on the science and then coming up with the strategy that works best for you personally.
Was there a chapter or a topic you found especially fun or challenging to write about?
Well, I would say the points chapters I thought would be the easiest because it's my expertise, but my challenge was getting it to a place I had to keep it high level and I want to go deep. So it was a challenge I want to explain to people the high level concepts. And yes, these things change. Since the book has been written, that's why this book is not a manual of every loyalty program and how many points it takes with Marriott versus Hyatt. But I wanted to teach people the mathematics roughly when you're assessing a loyalty program for your needs. How does, 100,000 Marriott points is not the same as 100,000 Hyatt points. And that's what people get messed up because you're earning and redeeming at different rates. So it's earning, redeeming, and perks. It's three categories of a loyalty program to think about. So that was actually, that's the meat of the book, but it was challenging to do it in a way that was informative for a wide audience. I didn't want to lose the audience, but I really find it important to give people the key. Uh, but there's no, I talk a lot about the technology that'll help you track points and stuff, but there's no one tool that's just going to do it all for you today. So no matter what, you still need to understand how the system works to figure out how best to get value for your specific needs.
There is tons of positive feedback on the book. If you could add one more chapter to the book after seeing reader feedback, what would it cover?
Brand.
I would do more of my personal stories. That's one thing people want.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be
Because
fun.
I have flown almost every major airline. I've had some really interesting experiences, flown with interesting celebrities. And so, yeah, I think adding more personal experiences. So maybe I'll just have to write another book one day of my behind the scenes of all the major airlines and cool hotels and some of the interesting things that have happened to me on my journeys.
That brings me to ask you about your favorite hotel property. Any hotel property that you've been to.
Well, I'll say one recently that really blew me away was Raffles Singapore. Service was extraordinary. The hotel is historic yet new, luxury, beautiful. I like hotels where I feel transported in time, and Raffles Singapore to me was just absolutely exquisite. The service. So that's the most recent. It's hard for me to choose, one favorite, but that's one that stands out to me as
Tell us which is your favorite airport and why.
Singapore. I have to give it to Singapore. I mean, just the automation, technology, shopping, the ease of it all is I just love Singapore Airport.
Which is your favorite airline and why?
I think I've flown Emirates first class the most of all the major, and I love Emirates first class. Even the A380 suite is a little bit dated and a little bit over the top, but I just love, flying with my parents or friends, going to the onboard bar, having your hot shower before landing, some champagne and caviar. You know what you're going to get. No one airline's perfect, and I don't believe Emirates is the best airline. I think they have plenty of things to work on. So I would say that, or Air France La Première, because Air France takes care of you on the ground, picks you up in a Porsche, exclusive lounge, escorts to plane. So ground service, Air France, and then just in-flight experience as an aviation geek. The A380 is my favorite plane. Emirates, I've got to give my nod to them as the biggest operator of the A380.
That was going to be my last question, Brian, and you answered that for me.
Thank you. And yeah, I've got to get back to India soon, and I've got to fly Air India. I got to give them a chance. What do you think? Is it too soon for me to fly them?
Yeah, you should definitely fly Air India. I think if you're going to fly them, you should start with their A350, which is now flying between New York and New Delhi. Maybe give that one a go and tell us what you think. But word to the wise, there is no F yet. Okay, only J. First class probably would come when their 777Xs start to arrive, which is anybody's guess right now.
Well, I don't know if I can wait that long. So, I love India. I've been several times. But funny enough, my last trip, I had to cut it short, and I still have never been to the Taj Mahal. So
What
I got to,
are you
yeah,
saying?
I know. The Points guy has never been to the Taj Mahal. So I got to rectify that soon. So I'll suck it up in business class to come back, get some
You'll take
amazing
one for the
food
team.
and meet in person. So thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I want to thank you for coming on to the Indian AvGeek, Brian. It's been brilliant chatting with you for the past hour or so. Best wishes to you always, and congratulations again on the book.
Thank you so much. Safe travels.
What a lovely man. Really enjoyable conversation with Brian. Next week, I will be back home, and it will be the turn of the Indian AvGeek. Surely you know about it. You don't? Then search for it right away. As usual, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode of the Indian AvGeek with your fellow AvGeeks. I am at Vishal Mehra on X, and you can follow at Brian Kelly on Instagram. With that, keep your tray tables up, your seatbelts fastened. I wish you well, and happy flying, my friends.